All rise. Veuillez vous lever. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Yes, Mr. Milosevic.
Podacima koji ste dali stoji
According to the information you have provided, it says that your previous profession was technical director. Where were you technical director, in fact?
Isham në fabrikën e shkëmbysjeve të ndësisë në Rahovec.
At the industrial exchange parts in Rahovec.
šta ste po struci?
Inxhinieri
And what is
makinerisë.
your vocation?
Mechanical engineering.
Inxhinieri makinerisë.
Mechanical engineering.
A gde ste završili školovanje i kad?
And where did you go to school? Where did you graduate and when?
Në Prishtinë
In Pristina
në vitin 1985.
in 1985.
Tvrdite da ste poslednjih 15
You
godina
say that
bili
for the last
izabrani
15
za starešinu
years
sela. je
you
tačno?
were the head of a village, elected that. Is that right? Village leader.
Po,
Yes.
A ko vas je izabrao za starešinu sela?
And who elected you village leader?
banorët e fshatit.
The residents of the village.
U trenutku kad ste davali izjavu,
When you were giving your
istražitelju,
statement to the
bili ste stari
investigator,
38 godina.
you were
tako?
38 years old, right?
Dyzet vjeçar.
40 years old.
40 godina.
39.
39.
39.
39.
Dobro, dakle vi ste bili starešina
Very
sela
well.
Seline
So
sa
you
svoje
were
24
village
godine.
leader of
Jel' tako?
Seline when you were 24 years old, right?
Nga 24 pastaj.
From the age of 24.
S obzirom da to nije uobičajeno na Kosovu,
As this isn't customary in Kosovo,
kako objašnjavate da ste
how do you
baš vi
explain the
tako
fact
mlad
that
čovjek pored drugih
such a
starijih
young man
mještana bili
was
izabrani za
elected
starešinu
to
sela?
be village leader with all the older people around you?
Kjo shpjegohet për arsye se
This can be
ne kontribuonim dhe
explained
punonim për të mirën dhe të ardhmen e atij
because
fshati.
we were working for the future and the prosperity of the village.
Dhe ai ishte profesion i lirë i vetë kontributit të çdo
And this-
personi ose çdo banore të atij fshati që dojë të jepte të mirat të fshatit për një ardhmëri më të mirë.
And this was a voluntary position because every villager tried to contribute something to for the future of the village.
Da li ste član neke političke
Are you a
partije?
member of any political party?
Tash po,
Now, yes.
Koje?
Which one?
Partisë Demokratike.
The Democratic Party.
Je li to ova stranka?
Is that the party
Rugove?
of Ibrahim Rugova?
Jo,
No.
A ko je predsjednik vaše stranke?
Who's the president of your party then?
Hashim Zotri Hashim Thaçi.
Mr. Hashim Thaçi.
Ste vi bili pripadnik UČK?
Were you a member of the KLA?
Jo,
No.
Od kad ste onda postali član
When
stranke
did you
Hašima
become
Tačića?
a member of the
Prim-
Hashim Thaçi party?
nga formimi i asaj partie.
from when the party was founded.
A kad je to bilo?
And when was that?
Po ishte kur edhe ka datën e formimit të saj.
On the date when it was formed.
Mislim, koji je taj dan?
What
Po
was
ishte-
that date?
Ishte dita e formimit të partisë pas luftës.
On the day when the party was founded after the war.
Ne znate tačan datum.
Don't know the exact date.
Pa nuk është shumë e rëndësi.
No, it's not very important.
Treba da odgovorite na pitanje.
Well, I'd like
je
you to
važno
answer the
ili ne,
questions
to
now.
nije
Whether it
vaša
is
ocena.
important or not is not up to you to decide.
Ndoshta nuk e kem parasysh momentin datën e caktuar.
Perhaps
Por e dim që është formuar pas
I can't really remember the date, but I know that it was founded after the war.
Dobro.
All
Na
right.
drugoj strani
On page
vaše izjave u
2 of
drugom
your statement,
pasusu
paragraph 2,
kažete, citiram vas,
it says, and I quote,
svi stanovnici
the
još
whole
uvek su bili
population of the village
I trust the witness has got the statement before him.
Yes?
svi stanovnici još uvek su
all the
bili u
inhabitants
selu,
were still in the village
jer kod nas nije bilo pripadnika
because
UČK,
there were no members of the
pa niko
KLA
nije
present,
imao
and there was
razloga
no
da
reason
ode.
for anyone to leave.
Završen citat.
End of
Jesu ovo
quotation.
doslovno vaše reči?
Are those your words? The whole population of the village was still present because we had no KLA presence and there was no reason for anyone to leave. Is that what you say?
Po,
Yes.
Sad mi objasnite
Now
zbog
explain
čega
this to me.
naglašavate
Why do you emphasize
da zato što
the
nije bilo
fact
pripadnika
that
UČK,
because there were no
stanovnici nisu imali
KLA,
razloga
that the inhabitants had
da
no
odu iz
reason
sela?
to leave the village? Why do you say that?
atë e them për arsye se
I say
çdo
this
kont
because
policia serbe dhe ushtria serbe
Everywhere, the Serbian
mund të në ato
army
zona ku
and
kishte ushtri.
police entered into
Prandaj ne
areas
ishim
where
të
there
bindur
was
se nuk ishin fajtor për
KLA.
atë që
So
ajo
I
mendonte,
wanted to
edhe pse si ishte
say
ashtu.
that
Mirë po,
we were not in
ne
any
vendosim
way
që të rrim në shtëpitë tona
to blame
dhe
for
më për
this.
atë nuk
And
ishim të
that's why
larguar.
we decided to remain in our houses and why nobody left the village.
Dobro, ali pošto
Yes,
kažete,
but as you say,
pošto nije bilo pripadnika OVK, niko nije imao
there were
razloga
no
da
KLA
ranije
we
napusti
had no
selo.
KLA presence and there was no
Da
reason
li
for
vi
anyone
to
to
u
leave
stvari
the village. When you say that,
Podrazumevate
do you in
da
fact
su i sela i
imply
mesta
that from
iz
villages and
kojih je bilo,
places
kojima je bilo
in
pripadnika
which there
UČK,
were members of the KLA,
stanovnici
the
napuštali sela?
population left the villages and those places?
Jo,
No.
Znači ni tamo gde je bilo
So not even in places
pripadnika
where there
UČK
were
stanovnici
KLA
nisu napuštali
members
sela.
did the inhabitants leave the villages, right?
nuk janë larguar askund për pollata përderisa policia serbe dhe ushtria serbe i largonin me dhunë nga shtëpitë e tyre.
Nobody left the villages until Serbian army and police forced them out.
Ja sam shvatio drugčije ovo vaše
I
objašnjenje.
understood
Da
your
niste imali
explanation in a
razloga jer
different
nije
way,
bilo
that you had no
pripadnika
reason
UČK,
because there were no
što znači da su
KLA.
tamo gde su bili pripadnici
Which
UČK imali
means,
razloga da napuste
conversely,
selo
that
stanovnici.
if there were KLA present, the inhabitants had reason to leave the village.
Da li je to logično ili nije?
Is that logical or not?
Jo, pasi
No.
që UÇK-ja ka vepruar një vit ndoshta,
Because
edhe
the
askund nuk është larguar
KLA
pollatat që të shkonin në Shqipëri.
was
Mirë po,
in
ose në vende
operation
tjera,
for a
në,
year,
shtete tjera
but
përreth.
in nowhere
Mirë po,
nowhere
në
did the
veprimin e ushtrisë serbe
population
dhe
go to
policisë serbe
Albania in this
në
time.
strategjinë e vet
But it
arriti
was
që
the Serbian army and the police, according to their strategy, regardless of where the KLA was, it was the Serbian forces that decided to expel the population into neighboring countries.
Dobro, pošto
All right.
kažete bez obzira
As you
gde
say,
se nalazila OVK,
regardless of where the
srpske snage se
KLA was,
ponašale
the
isto,
Serb forces
zašto
behaved
ste
in the
onda
same
rekli
way. Why then did you
da su
say
svi
that
stanovnici
all the
još uvijek bili u
inhabitants
Sarajevu, kod nas nije bilo
were still in the
pripadnika
village
UČK?
because we
Zašto
had
onda,
no
ako
KLA
je to bez
presence there?
obzira,
If
zašto
this
o
is
tome govorite s
regardless,
obzirom?
as you say, why are you placing it in regard of this, if I can put it that way?
Këtë e theksojmë se deri në momentin
We
e
emphasize
intervenimit
this
të
because
NATO-s,
until the NATO
policia
intervention,
serbe dhe ushtria serbe nuk ka
the
zhvendosur
Serbian
asnjë
army
banor
and
nga
police
trevat shqiptare
had
që të
not
zhvendoset në
expelled
troje tjera, në
anybody
hapësirë
from
tjera
the
të shtetit fëmijë.
Albanian
Ndërsa në
territories
momentin e tillë,
to
në
neighboring
strategji e
countries.
përgatitur nga ana serbe
But at the
Edhe
moment of the
ushtria e saj
NATO intervention,
ishte që
they had a
të largoj
strategy
popullatën
ready
pavarësisht
prepared
se ka apo s'ka UÇK
to
në
expel
territoret kudo që
the
ishin.
population regardless of whether the KLA was present in these places or not.
Dobro, to znači do
All
pre
right. That
24.
means that
marta do
before the
početka rata
24th
niste
of
imali
March, the
nikakvih
beginning of the
problema.
war, you had no problems. That would follow on from that, would it?
Në fshat nuk kemi pas probleme
We
fare.
didn't have any kind of problem in the village.
A onda kad je počeo rat,
And then when the war broke out,
onda su krenule i izbeglice.
the refugees
svakom
started,
ratu, jel tako ili
just
ne?
like they do in any war, right?
Jo,
No.
me momentin e arës së ushtrisë serbe dhe policisë serbe në
When the
fshat,
Serbian army and police came to the village,
kishte apo s'kishte refugjat, qëllimi i tyre ishte që të zhvendoset komplet popullata e
whether
fshatit
the
që
KLA
vjen
was present or
në
not,
trojat
the
e shteteve
intention
përfshirë.
was to expel the
Pavarësisht
entire
kush dhe
population
çka kishte aty.
to the territory of
Si edhe
neighboring villages, regardless of
vrasjet dhe
who was
masakrime,
there. And it
karbonizimet e
involved
gjitha ato që ndodhen në fshatin që
murders and assaults and arson and other crimes.
Da, recite mi, jeste čuli za
Yes,
neki
tell
rat
me
bez
this.
izbeglica?
Have you ever heard of a war without refugees?
Not a matter for the witness.
Dobro, ajmo onda
All
prvo
right.
da...
Let's first
razjasnimo.
then clear up one other point.
Ovo pitanje vaše izjave na prve dve
What you
strane,
say in your statement on the first two
vi ste
pages,
objasnili
you
da je
explain
vojska
that the army
u 9:30
at
došla,
9:30 arrived,
vi ste se sakrili,
you hid,
dešavali su se tu razni događaji, kako
various
kažete, ulazili
events
su u
took
kuće,
place, as
odnosili
you
neku
say, they
imovinu.
entered houses, took away
I
some
onda su
properties
tog
and
prvog
belongings,
dana,
and then on that first day,
Vi ste prisluškivali nekakav
that is
razgovor,
to say, you
kažete, i
listened
tako
into
dalje.
a
I onda su
conversation,
prvog dana,
and then on that first
Otišli.
day, they left.
jel tako?
Is that right?
Vi ste onda verovali da
And you then
su oni
believed
došli,
that they
otišli i
had
prošli.
come, gone,
Jel
and
tako?
passed through, right?
Po, duke llogaritur në strategjinë e drejtanishme deri në datën
Looking
25
at the
mars,
strategy
ushtria
so
serbe dhe
far
policia
till
serbe
25th
në
of
gjithë Kosovën në
March,
disa vende
the army
veprojnë
and
në atë
police
mënyrë. Do të
throughout
thënë,
Kosovo
ajo
behaved in this
veprojke,
kind of way.
kryke detyrat e tij dhe pastaj u ktheke mbrapa,
They
kështu që
would
ishte një
go
ofenzivë
out
një
and do
ditore
their
apo gjysmë
duties and
ditore.
then withdraw
Edhe
on
mendonim se
single
ne
day or
gjithë
half-day
popullata se ajo do të jetë
offenses.
vetëm ajo ditë edhe
And
mbrapa
we,
sigurisht që
the
do të jemi të lirë
population,
prapë të kthehemi në shtëpitë tona.
thought that it would be an
Tog
offense of
prvog
this
dana,
kind and we
koliko
would again
vidim
be
iz
free to
vaše
return to our
izjave,
homes.
Dobro,
All right.
koliko sam
As
shvatio,
far
tog
as I was
prvog
able to
dana
gather,
o kome
on
vi
that
govorite na
first day,
prve
the
dve
one you're
stranice,
referring
niko
to
nije
in pages
stradao.
1 and 2 of your statement,
Jel tako?
nobody suffered at all, right?
Jo mendoni se keni kuptuar gabimisht.
Think you've
Ditën e
misunderstood
parë
this.
kanë vuajtur mjaft.
A lot of
Janë
people
vrarë
suffered on the
55 vet.
first day. 55
janë
people were killed on the
grumbulluar
first
dhe janë
day.
plagëshkitur gjithë populata
The entire
në
population
vendet
was
sektuara.
gathered together and robbed in a certain place.
Janë kallur disa shtëpi
Several houses were burned.
dhe është bombarduar gjithë ditën me tank,
And there was
autoblinda
fire
dhe
from
me Praga.
tanks and armored vehicles and Pragas throughout the
Nga
day,
ora 6 në mëngjes
from 6
deri
in
në
the
orën 8
morning
në mbrëmje.
to 8 in the evening.
Dobro, vi kažete od
All right, you
5:30,
say
ali to
from
nije bitno.
5:30, but that doesn't
A
matter.
gde vam to piše
And
u
where does
vašoj
it say
izjavi
in your
da su
statement
stradali ljudi tog prvog dana?
that people did fall casualty on that first
Nigde
day?
niste napisali da
You
je
didn't
bilo ko
write that
stradao
anywhere. You
prvog
didn't
dana.
say that anybody
Nema
was a
nigde u
victim
vašoj
on that
izjavi ni o
first
kakvom
day.
stradanju prvog dana.
Just a moment. Let the witness deal with that. Just look at your statement, Mr. Yamini, if you have it.
Po,
Yes.
po. Në deklaratën tonë thuhet
In my statement, it
asisoj,
says
mirë po,
like that.
vrasjet dhe masakrimet e datës së 25
But
vërtetohen
the
në mëngjes kur prindit e mi kthehen
murder
nga
So of the
tubimet që ishin
25th
në fshat.
happened
Nga masa,
on that
popullata cili
day.
ishte tubuar. Dhe nga ata,
When-
informatën në orën 8 të mëngjesit, lajmi që janë të vrarë kaq njerëz.
and it was
siç
on
thash më
at
parë.
8 in the morning that the news came that so many people had been killed. On the following day,
Dajte molim vas,
Well, come on now,
pokažite
please.
mi u vašoj
Show me
izjavi
in your
gde
statement
počinjete sa 25.3.
where you begin with the
5, pa onda u
25th of
5:30
March
vojne
at
snage
5 and then
i tako dalje.
5:30. You say about
Kažete
5:30
u
a.m.
trećem
the military
pasusu na prvoj
forces.
strani,
That is in paragraph
nije
3 on the first
izgledalo da
page.
gađaju ljude.
It did not appear
Već
that
se
they were
činilo da
aiming at the
žele da
people, but it
zaplaše
seemed that they were
sve u
trying to
selu.
scare everyone in the village. That is how
I
your
onda
sentence
govorite
reads.
da
And
su
then you go on
ljudi
to say
otišli i
that
tako dalje,
people left and
ali
so on.
nigde prvog dana
But
nema
nowhere on the first day
nikakve,
do you
apsolutno
speak.
nikakve vaše izjave
There is
ovde
absolutely
o
no
bilo
statement of
kakvom
yours
stradanju bilo
referring to any
kog
people getting
pojedinca.
hurt or any casualties
Je li
or
tako
any
ili nije
individuals getting hurt. Isn't that right?
I onda su oni napustili,
And
vi ste
then they
računali,
left.
napustili su,
You
posle se
say,
vratili, to je
and
sad drugo
returned
pitanje,
afterwards.
ali za
That's
ovaj
another
prvi
matter.
dan,
But as to
recite
that
mi,
first
gde
day,
piše u
tell
vašoj
me
izjavi
please,
da je bilo ko
where in your
stradao?
statement does it say that people were hurt, that there were casualties?
Në deklaratën time,
in my
thuhet
statement,
se si ka ndodhur me të
it states
25-in
what
dhe të
happened on the
26-in dhe
25th
të
and the
27-in e
26th and
pastaj.
27th and thereafter.
Thuhet shumë qartë
It says very
se ç'ka
clearly
ndodhur me datën
what happened
25.
on the
Me datën
25th,
26,
the
ju lutem
26th,
shtjelloni mirë deklaratën time.
and please read my statement
A baš zato što
carefully.
se jasno kaže šta se
Well,
dogodilo,
precisely because you
ja
say
tvrdim da u
specifically
vašoj
what
izjavi
happened,
nigde ne
I
piše da
claim
je
that
bilo
your
ko
statement
stradao
makes no
25.
mention
Je
of
to tačno
anybody
ili nije
getting
tačno?
hurt on the 25th. Is that right or is it not?
Yes, Mr. Knight.
The accused is simply not turning his mind to what the evidence has been. 5 p.m. the same day, the witness has already given account of what he overheard, the inference he drew from that. And if he didn't happen to see any particular killings because of his vantage point, that's one thing. But it's as clear as can be that he assumed right from the beginning that there were killings going on. And he gave a calculation of how many he thought there were from what he overheard on the radio.
I think of 55 people. If it does, perhaps you could refer me to it. Now, Mr. Milosevic, you made the point. Now let's move on to something else.
Dobro, dakle, ta
All right.
činjenica da se prvog
Now,
dana
this
ništa
fact
nije
that
dogodilo,
nothing happened on that
logički
first
demantuje
day
ovo što vi
logically
govorite da ste
refutes
slušali,
what you're
je li
talking about
tako
when you
ili
say
nije?
that you listened in, that you heard this. Isn't that right?
No, that's not a point. The witness has described what he heard, and you can ask him about it. But asking him hypothetical questions like that is not going to help anybody.
Sad ću da ga pitam o
Ask him
tome
now. I'll ask him
koliko je
about that
udaljena
right
ova
now.
kuća
How
koju
far
ste
is this
pokazali,
house
u
away?
kojoj ste
The one
navodno
you
slušali, iz
indicated,
koje ste navodno
from which
slušali
you allegedly
razgovore
listened in to the
sa
conversation
koje je komandant
which the
preko radija
commander had
vodio
via
sa nekim
radio
s
with
kojim je komunicirao.
the
Koliko je
person he was
udaljena ova kuća
communicating with. How far is this house?
15 metra.
15 meters.
Pa zar ne vidite na ovom snimku,
can't
s
you see
obzirom
on
na
this
to da
photograph,
se vidi vaš prozor sa
as
koga
you
je
can see
snimano,
your
da
own
ovdje ima
window from
najmanje
which this
50
was
metara.
taken, that it's at least 50 meters to that house?
Jo, ato ju e mendoni për
we have
ndërsa
the-
është
No, that's what
realitet
you may think.
15 metrash.
We have the photograph in front of us.
Da. I da li se vidi na
Yes,
fotografiji da
and on the
nikakvog
photograph,
prozora prema vama
can you
nema?
see that there's no window facing you, towards you?
Jo, sigurisht se kuptoni fotografinë, për
No,
ndryshe
it seems you don't understand the
numrin ka
photograph.
022 6138 që
Because
vetë qartë pozicioni i dritares e shtëpisë paraprake
022-6138, you
ndaj
can
dy
see
balkoneve përballë.
the
Domethënë
window
e distanca
clearly
vetëm
with
15
two
metra.
balconies in front, so you can see that it's only 15 meters away.
Balkoni nisu
The
okrenuti ka
balconies
vama,
are not
ni
facing you,
prozori
are
nisu
not turned
okrenuti
towards
ka
you,
vama,
neither
nego su
are the
okrenuti
windows. They don't
pod
face
uglom od
you.
90
They are at an
stepeni na
angle of
pravac
90 degrees
sa
and are
koga je
facing the
gledao
direction
vaš prozor.
from which
A
your
prema
window was
vama
looking
prozora
out
nema.
onto, but there's no window facing you.
Dakle, vi tvrdite da ste
So you
slušali
claim
razgovor
that you
u
were
susednoj
listening to a
kući koja čak
conversation
nema ni
taking place
prozore
in
okrenute
the
prema
neighboring
vama,
house, which has
sa
no windows
tavana
turned towards you, and that you were
susedne
doing this
kuće
to
koja je
boot
udaljena
from
ovoliko koliko je
the
udaljena. Ovo
loft,
se
the
može
attic of a neighboring house,
utvrditi
which
sasvim
is
tačno
the
koliko je
distance that you can
udaljena.
see, and we
Nećemo se time
can
baviti.
establish that distance.
Vi
We're not
tvrdite
going
da
to
ste
go into
slušali
that now,
razgovor
but you
preko
claim
radija.
that you were listening into this conversation via radio.
Ju losum ne jemi të bindur me mendimet e juaja
Excuse
që ju
me,
nuk pranoni asgjë të vërtetën.
we
Mirë po e
know that
vërteta
you don't
është se
accept
dritarja
the
është në
truth,
pikën
but the truth
horizontale, ne
is
vjen
that
vertikale ku shihet
the
drejt nga dritarja në të dy
window
ballkanet në
is in
distancë
a
15
position
metra.
to see the two
Domethënë nuk
balconies
është
at
fare ashtu se
distance
ju
of
qysh e
15
paramendoni
meters.
që është një
It's
fotografi e
not,
tillë.
it's not a
Prandaj
photograph of the
është
kind that you
emocion, një
suggest
dëgjim
at all.
i kësaj pozite në 15 metra.
So you can indeed see this site from 15 meters away.
Ovo su nezavršeni balkoni na kojima
But
niko nije mogao
these
ni da
are
sedi.
balconies that have not been finished yet.
Ljudi su bili
Construction
unutra
not completed.
i
People
vi
couldn't
kažete da
sit
ste
out
čuli
on them. The
razgovor
people were
njihov
inside, and
sa
you
ovog
say
vašeg
that you
prozora.
heard
Gde
their
ste se
conversation
sakrili
from your
da vas
window
niko
where
ne
you
vidi?
were hiding so that nobody could see you.
That is his evidence, yes, that he could hear the conversation.
Dobro.
All right.
Ali i po tom iskazu od
But
zločina
according to the
navodnih koje
statement from the
navodi,
alleged
skinuli su mu
crimes
deo
that he refers
satelitskog tanjira sa
to, part
zgrade.
of the satellite dish was removed from the building.
A on navodi kako je
And
čuo,
he says that he heard
kako će ne znam kako da bude
how
gore
there
nego u
would, it would be
Račku, pa je onda
worse
čuo
in
zaustavite napad
Račak,
na
and then he
Celine, pa
said
onda
them
ovaj kaže
say,
dobro,
stop the
zaustavit
attack on
ćemo.
Celine, and then the other
Kao
man
da su
said,
to
yes, we
razgovori
will,
između
as if this
između
was a
komande i-
conversation between the command
oficira.
and the
Da-
officers.
This is not a question. Either you must ask a question or we'll close the cross-examination.
Dobro, idem ja dalje po
All right,
pitanjima.
I'll move on in my questions.
Na strani 2 u drugom pasu
On page
navodite da
2,
je većina
paragraph
stanovnika
2,
napustila
you
svoje
say that
domove i
most of
okupila
the
se na 2 ili
inhabitants
3
left
glavna
their
mesta u
homes
selu. Na kojima su se to
and
mestima
collected
okupili?
at 2 or 3 main areas in the village. Which areas were these?
Ato pika janë në periferi të fshatit ku ata mund të shishin veten pak më të sigurt në strehim të në ndonjë strehim të malit apo të një grope ku ata nuk mund të presin ndonjë plagë me kokët e tyre.
Or hiding in some kind of hole where bullets wouldn't be able to catch them.
A zbog čega se i vi niste s njima tamo okupili,
And
nego
why
ste se
didn't you
sakrili
go
na
with
tavan
them
sa
there?
svojim
Why didn't you
rođakom?
collect
Što ste
there,
se
but
sakrili
you
na tavan?
hid in the attic with a relative of yours? Why were you hiding in the attic?
Ne, nuk ikëm për arsye duke ditë strategjinë e serbëve, me një kohë të gjatë paraprake, se ata ishin të interesuar që moshat e tilla, njerëzit që kontribuonin për ardhmërinë e atij vendi, të i likvidojnë. Prandaj moshat e tona, prej moshës 30 vjeçare dhe 40 vjeçare, ishin të detyruar të largohen nga e mos që mos të tohom në mesin e fëmijëve grave, plezhve e të tjerë ose nanëve dhe babave tona. Prandaj ishte e arsyeshme ikja nga grupet e tilla ku ata mos të shohin edhe më të keqen. Një gjë mund të vizitoj se me daljen e gjithë banorët e fshatit nga fshati i Celin është kërkuar nga banorët e fshatit. Unë personalisht, si kryetari i fshatit se ku gjendem. Edhe janë rrahur 2 banorët e fshatit nuk për këtë arsye pse s'ka dërguar se ku gjendem unë.
Two people came and were beaten up because they couldn't tell the police and the army where I was. They inquired about my whereabouts and they were unable to tell them.
A što su oni vas tražili posebno
And why were they
kad vi
looking
niste
for
bili
you,
član UČK?
especially when you weren't a KLA member?
Nuk është e vërtetë që policia serbe dhe strategjia serbe ka qenë vetëm të likvidohen apo të kërkon antarët e UÇK-s, por ka qenë detyrë e tyre me gjithë vitet e kaluara që ata gjithçka që është intelektuale ose gjithçka që është kontribon në të mirën e shqiptarëve të likvidohen nga forcat apo nga
Intellectual that
kriminalë.
contributes to the prosperity of the Albanians. That's what Serbian criminals attempted to do.
Dobro, odgovarajte na moja pitanja,
All
molim vas,
right, will you
dajte
please
sa
just answer my questions?
intelektualcima da se ne bavimo. Zbog
We
čega
don't
ste
need
se
to
vi
go into
sa
this business with intellectuals.
rođakom skrili na tavan,
Why did
a
you hide in
niste
the
znali gde su
attic
bila
with your
vaša deca?
relative
I'm sorry.
and you didn't know where your children were?
If the accused asks questions of the kind he asks of a person who may rank as an intellectual, and the person's understanding is that he may have been targeted on that basis, then the answer is proper. And the accused regularly trying to shut out questions by making comments is really unacceptable.
Yes. Next question.
Pa ja nisam shvatio da se ovdje radi o intelektualcu,
Well, I
a
didn't
ako je tačno...
We're not
Understand
going
this
to go
witness to be an
into.
intellectual, and if it is true,
We're not going to go into this now.
Ok,
We've dealt with
gde
it.
su
All
vi
right.
ste znači sad opisali,
so
svi su
now,
otišli,
as
samo
you
ste
just
vi i vaš
described
rođak
to us,
ostali na tavanu.
everybody had
Gde su u
left
tom
except
trenutku
for
bila
you
vaša
and your
deca?
relative who were in the attic. And where were your children at that moment?
Në atë moment fëmijët, babën,
At that
memen,
moment, my
edhe
children,
shoqen
my
me gjithë
father, my
fëmijë
mother,
e
my
kom quar së bashku
and my
me
wife,
gjithë parafisin tim në
alongside
masën
the
e gjithë
rest
popullatës
of
të
the
fshatit
extended
Celin.
family and
Mirë
the
po, e ceka më
overall
parë
inhabitants of
që ne
Celine
nuk
went
dëshironim të jemi në mesin e tyre,
away together.
duke
As I
ruajtur
said
që
earlier, we
policia
did
juaj
not want to be
do
in
të
their
ketë strategji të
midst,
tillë që në
being
mesin e
aware
asaj populate
that
të tërheq
your
njerëz
police,
si
based on the
që ishim
strategy
unë e disa të tjerë.
that we were
Nuk
fully
ishim të
aware of
larguar
what it
vetëm
was,
unë me fëmijën tim, mirë po ishin
want
edhe
to be
shumë të
part
tjerë
of
të
that
rinj,
because it
të cilët
wasn't
mbetëm
only
mbrapa
me
dhe
and
40
my
ditë duke
cousin, there were
varrosur
other
të gjitha ato
people
masakra,
who
të gjitha ato të vrarë që
were
nuk kishin
left
lënë në Celin.
behind and helped bury the people and the victims of the massacre that occurred at Celina.
A objasnite mi odakle je vojska pucala na selo.
Can you explain to me, please, where did the army shoot at the village from?
Ajo nuk është shumë problematike, nuk ka zgjedh pozicione,
It's
por
not
ka
a
qenë
big
i rrethuar i
deal.
gjithë
It
fshatin në çdo
wasn't
pozicion.
choosing its positions. The whole
Nga rruga
village was
kryesore Prizren
encircled
Jakov,
from all sides, from the
nga
main road,
Bela Crka,
Prizren
nga
Jakov,
Rahoveci,
from Bela
nga
Crka,
Langaci,
from
nga
Rahovec,
Kushamale.
from Lingaci, from Kushamale.
Dobro, a ako nisu gađali
All
ljude u
right,
selu,
and
koga
if
su
they
to
were
gađali?
not targeting people in the village, then what did they target?
Jo, ata ishin të interesuar që të kenë të sigurt të hyrin kam së rikje në fshat,
keener to secure the entry on foot into the village so that everybody would be massacred and there'd be burning down. So the duty on that first day, using heavy artillery, was to pave the way for the entry the very next day of the infantry and of the soldiers on foot to do everything that does not belong to modern civilization.
And what did they destroy with their artillery in order to clear the way?
Asgjë tjetër, përveç se të friksojnë popullatën, të ngurmëllohen në vendet e caktuara,
Nothing else
që
but
të
to scare the
ata
population
të kenë më lehtë të
away
veprojnë në
so
detyrat e
that it
tyre.
would be easier for them to carry out what they'd set out to do.
All right, you say that you were hiding for 48 hours in the attic with your cousin, Isuf Yemini. Did Isuf give a statement to the investigators of the tribunal as well?
Po, pasi ishte një deklaratë e njëjtë dhe e tillë,
But given that the
pasi
statement was
ne
fairly
ishim gjithmonë
similar,
së bashku,
given we were together all the time,
atëherë ishte mjaftueshme një deklaratë që
it
të jetë prezencë në
appeared
këtë tribunal.
sufficient to have only one statement of that kind submitted before this tribunal.
In your statement, you say, in the house adjacent to us, commanders used second floor and balcony on the second floor. The balcony in which they were faced the house in which I was hiding. So as we can see from the photographs, this balcony is not facing the house, it's facing the opposite side. And then...
Mr. Milosevic, we have been over this point. We're not going to go over it again. Find another point.
Very well.
You
claim that the soldiers shot indiscriminately throughout the village, broke into houses, looted, yelled, and so on. Is that right?
Po.
Yes.
To sve mora da je znači pucali,
So that means that there were shooting indiscriminately, yelling, and so on. So all of that must have produced a lot of noise. Is that right or not?
A nuk do të thotë që ishte shumë zhurmë, mirë po
Not necessarily a lot
ishte
of noise.
kohë e qetë nga populata që ishte në atë fshat, atëherë manevronin vetëm serbët ushtarak dhe policia e saj.
Militaries and the police that operated in the area.
Well, everything that you listed so far, didn't that create a lot of noise? Now you're telling us that it was quiet in the village. So what was it? Was there noise, yelling, shooting, and everything that I've numbered so far? Or was it quiet? Choose one or the other.
Jo, ishin zhurmat dhe bërtimat e gjithë atyre që ishin nga ana e policisë dhe ushtrisë serbe. Domethënë nuk kishte zhurmë në anën e kundërt nga popullata e atij fshati. Ata ishin në qetësi dhe presin çdo moment vdekjen.
Because they were waiting death to come.
I'm not asking you about the origin of the noise. I'm just asking you whether all of that shooting, yelling, and so on, did that produce a lot of noise? You are telling us that the army did all this, so was there a lot of noise?
Ka pasur sigurisht, ka pasur mjaft.
Yes, certainly there was some noise.
Sad mi objasnite kako je moguće da vi
Could you now
skriveni na
explain to
tavanu
me,
svu tu
please,
buku koju je
how
stvarala
was it
vojska
possible that you
tu
were in
neprestanu
the
nasumičnu
attic
pucnjavu,
hiding, and all of
čujete
this
razgovor u ovoj
noise
susednoj kući
created
koja
by
vam
the
je na slici?
army and firing was going on by the army, and all the while you were able to hear the conversation in the adjacent house?
Well, the question, to be fair, should be this. Was there a noise at the time of the conversation?
Zhurma ishte në fshat, ndërsa zhurma nuk ishte në vendin ku ishim ne të vendosur edhe komanda e policisë serbe pra neve 15 metra. Do thotë zhurma ishte e përgjithshme në gjithë fshatin. Domethënë neve nuk na pengoi që ato të ndëgjohen të gjithë bisedat dhe organizimet që i bën të policia nga e pikë.
That did not hamper us overhearing the conversation that the police carried out during those moments.
Dobro. A vi također u svojoj izjavi na trećoj strani kažete celog dana sam gledao kako vojnici ulaze u kuće širom sela.
The soldiers go into the houses throughout the village. So were you able to see that through that same window?
Me falni, gabimisht lexoni pjesën e tretë të kësaj deklarate. Mirë, ajo është pasi që ne kishim shkuar në Zerdë dhe ishim kthyer mbas 2 dite, edhe gjatë kohën 30 ditë kemi ndajt në fshat. Jo në fshat brenda ditën, por kemi ndajt në periferi të fshatit, kemi vrosur të gjithë të vrarët dhe masakruar të fshatit 82 vetë.
Killed and massacred all in all 82 people.
Molim vas, pročitat ću vam drugi pasus
I'm going
na
to
trećoj
read to
strani.
you paragraph
Piše,
2 on
celog
page 3.
dana sam
It says as
gledao,
follows:
govorite,
throughout
znači
the
da ste
day,
sakriveni gore, da ste
so now you
48
describe
sati.
how you were
To vam je
hidden
na
up
trećoj
there for
strani drugi
48
pasus.
hours. This is
Celog
on
dana
page
sam
3,
gledao
paragraph
kako
2,
vojnici
and you
ulaze
say,
u kuće širom
throughout the day
sela
I saw
i iz njih
soldiers
odnose
entering
vredne stvari.
and looting all the houses of
Sa
valuables
svih
throughout the
kuća su
village.
skidali satelitske tanjire.
They removed satellite dishes from all of the houses.
Tokom dana zapaljeno je 12
During the
kuća.
day, 12 houses
I tako
were
dalje.
set on fire, and so
Znači,
on.
celog dana ste gledali kako vojnici ulaze u
This
kuće širom
means
sela.
that you watched the entire day how the soldiers entered the houses in the whole village.
Po, kjo është me datën 26, kur gjatë gjithë ditës ata hyrën në shtëpi, i ndezën të gjitha shtëpit, mirëshin gjitha sendet me vlerë dhe dominoshin gjithçka që ishte për të demoluar.
And demolished everything that was deemed to be demolishable.
Molim vas, vi to govorite o 25.
Please,
26.
you are now
počinje tek na
referring
dnu
to the
ove strane oko 8
25th. The
sati sljedećeg dana
26th
moji
will not
roditelji i
begin
drugi
until
član
the end
porodice
of that
vratili se
page when you
kući
say
sa mnom
about
i tako
8
dalje.
a.m. the next day,
Ovo
my
govorite o
parents, and so on
25.
and so on.
Kako je moguće
So
da
what
ste
you
sa ovog
spoke of
prozora
before
mogli da
was the
vidite,
25th.
da gledate
So how
celog
was it
dana
possible
kako
for
širom
you
sela
to
ulaze
see
vojnici u
from
kući i
this
sve to rade
window
što kažete?
during
Šta
the
se
course
vidi
of the
sa ovog
entire
prozora?
day, the soldiers entering the houses and so on? What were you able to see from that window?
Është të cekur në deklaratën tonë se çka është vërejtur gjatë gjithë ditës. Duke u vërejtur nga ora 8 e mëngjesit deri në mbrëmje. Duke filluar nga takimet e para me prind, pastaj duke filluar policia serbe ndaj në vrasjes e prindërve të mi, dhe ndërkohë deri në mbrëmje duke parë të gjithë policinë dhe ushtërinë e cila hynte në çdo shtëpi, diçka çdo shtëpi deri në mbrëmje.
Until the hours of the evening, that is.
Molim vas.
Mr. Yemeni, please take a look at your statement. While you are describing what happened during the day of 25th, you said, throughout the day, I saw soldiers entering and looting all the houses. So you are being asked about that sentence, about that paragraph. Is it that you watched all of that, all of what happened during the day? Or is it kind of thing you've heard of?
Jo, ata e kena parë gjatë gjithë ditës me datën 25.
I saw everything throughout the day on the 25th.
So the question is that whether you were able to see all the village from the window you were of the room you were hiding.
Po, ne kemi qenë në pozicion kur mund të shiqoshëm nga dritarja, por mund të shiqoshëm edhe nga pjesë tjera të kulmit të shtëpisë, ku ngritsim mbulesat, qërmidat, dhe shifrin se si manevrojshëm në gjithë pjesën e fshatit.
Thank you. Please go on, Mr. Milosevic.
Very well. So that means that there was a military command 15 meters from you, a full yard of people, of soldiers, as well as the second story of the house, and yet you still take the roof tiles off the roof in order to look. So weren't you afraid that you would be noticed?
Po, mirë pa, ajo ishte aftësia e jonja, ndërsa dobësi e policisë serbe, e cila kishte quar ushtarë në katrin tonë poshtë neve, të cilët nuk i takojshte ndoshta në krimit të tillë.
Broken up all rules and sent soldiers to occupy the second floor of my house.
All right, I'm talking about your fear now. You hid out of fear, not because you wanted to be above, on a story above. Weren't you afraid to remove the roof tiles of a house in which there were a lot of troops, as well as a yard full of troops? Weren't you afraid of being noticed?
Ne kishim hekur frikën në atë moment se prisin çdo moment vdekjen, prandaj dëshirojshëm që dinim se çka po ndodh me gjithë fshatin.
To be going away because we were expecting to be killed from moment to moment, having seen what was happening around the village.
Dobro.
All right, that is quite enough. Now tell me, please, paragraph 1, page 3, you state there that the soldiers who were on the second floor of the house in which you were hiding, just a few meters above in the attic, stood guard for the rest. Is that right?
Ashtu ishte.
Yes, that's right.
Kako ste zaključili, zašto bi oni čuvali stražu kad u selu nije bilo nikoga,
why would they stand guard if there was nobody else in the village except for armed residents, and especially in view of the fact that there were no armed KLA members, as you claim it? So why did they have to stand guard?
Ja, sigur ky moment që është fakt, kur ata kanë menduar që s'ka fare njëri, ana ishon vetëm 2 metra larg. Ne mund të bëjshëm atë që ata t'i vrasnin ose komandën të vrasnin. Ne nuk i bënëm atë, duke llogaritur se ai nuk i takon njerëzimit.
The command and everybody else. We didn't do that because we did not believe in that kind of method in this kind of civilization.
A jeste vi bili naoružani?
Were you armed?
Jo.
No.
Kako ste onda mogli da ih ubijete kad niste bili naoružani?
So how could you have killed them if you were not armed? Kill the commander and the soldiers and so on.
Kishte mundësi mjaftueshme se si mund të vrisin ata, apo mund të kishte metoda tjera, nuk duhet të thuhet që vetëm me armë të vrisin ata.
Methods, you can't kill people using weapons alone.
A kakvim ste to drugim metodama mogli da ih ubijete, molim vas?
What other methods were at your disposal? Could you please tell us?
This is all hypothetical. Mr. Milosevic, you've got 2 minutes left. Is there anything else you want to ask this witness?
Pa ja imam još mnogo pitanja, ja ne mogu da razumem da ovakvog svedoka treba da ispitujem manje od 40 minuta, gospodine
cross-examine this kind of witness for less than 40 minutes, Mr. May. He is coming out with all kinds of things here.
We have judged it, and we judge that 45 minutes is sufficient. Now, if you have anything else to ask him, you should ask it now.
Imam još bar 30-ak pitanja.
I have at least 30 more questions.
Ali da pokušam da vi govorite o tome.
But let me try and complete this.
Dolazili su specijalci.
You say here that
nosili su duge brade, obrijane glave bez kapa.
Troops came, they had
visile im crvene trake. Bili su slično naoružani,
they had red ribbons, they were armed in a similar way, they had long knives that were at least half a meter long. Does that mean they had some kind of sabers?
You
should know that.
Vi tvrdite, ja ne znam za te noževe duže od pola metra, ali
I don't know of these
vi tvrdite,
knives
pa vas
that are
pitam,
more
jesu
than
nosili
half a
sablje, a
meter
onda kažete
long. That's what I'm
da su
asking
videli vašu
you. Were
majku
they
u
in fact
dvorištu
sabers? And then
i rekli
you
šta
say that
radiš
they
tu
saw
stara.
your mother in the
A vi ste
yard
za to vreme skrivali
and said, well, what are you
pod krovom
doing there,
zajedno sa
old
svojim
woman?
rođakom.
And at that time
Pitanje
you
mi
were
glasi,
hiding with your cousin in the attic.
što
So
ste
my
se vi
question
skrivali
is,
pod krovom, kad čak i
why
vaša
were you
majka, znači
hiding
žensko,
under the roof
stoji u
when
dvorištu, još je
even
htjela
your
da
mother,
ispeče
a
hleb i
female
tako dalje,
therefore, stood
obavlja
in the
normalne
yard,
kućne poslove.
baked the bread and went on her normal business?
Nuk është e vërtetë se ai ishte duke vepruar normalisht. Ai ishte në atë moment tek unë për të provuar bukë për të ushqyer, po unë duke llogaritur në punën edhe ofenzivën serbe, kërkova nga ajo që të kthehet opet në grupin e gjithë popullatës të fshatit, ku atje ishin fëmijë dhe shoqja, dëshirojnë që të prindit dhe kushërinë të kthehen në ato pozicione, duke llogaritur që do të fillojë ofenziva e tanishme gjatë asaj dite. Dhe mëma ime u kthyer nga unë me bukën e dorë. Në momente kur ai arriti në Ubor, policia serbe me 12 persona ku ishin të vendosur në një kamion i cili qarkullonte pranë oborit tim, sheh në nëntime dhe flet në gjuhën e tyre serbe, barbare, ndaj saj, ku ajo frikohet në moment dhe vendos të shkon
They spoke to her and she was scared away.
We're bringing this examination to an end. You're now past your time. But tell us this, Mr. Yamini, what happened to your mother?
Nona ime dhe baba im dhe kushërin ishin në podrom. Në atë moment nëna kur shkon aty tregon se kaloi një grup polici serb. Dhe ata së bashku biseduan dhe vendosën pra të hyjnë në podrom. Në momente kur ata hyjnë në podrom, një 15 minuta mbrapa hyn policia ushtarake serbe në Obor, demolon dyert e hyrjes dhe vendosë hyjnë në podrome, në shtëpi. Në atë moment vendosë hyjnë në podrom, apërshtatët vet, ku edhe nxjerrën nga podromi 5 antarë që ishin aty. Baba, nëna, Agja, djali Agjës me grua. Dhe vendosë pranë shtëpisë, ku edhe mund të shihet në fotografitë që janë prezente si dëshmi. Në atë moment polici pyet prindin, se a keni të holla? Prindi thot që kem të holla dhe pyet ku i ke? I kem në dhomën e fjetjes. Mune pranë ndërtesës ku ishin të vendosur.
of the building
Në
where
i
they
përgjigjet
were.
në gjuhën shqipe.
And my
Dhe
mother
thot, s'ka
says
koni nga
in
ne
Albanian,
pleqet.
what do you want
Ne jemi ata
of
të cilët
us,
nuk kem asgjë
old
kundra
people?
jush,
We've
kundra
got nothing
obligimit juaj,
against
as që s'kemi
you,
bërë të
nothing against
keqe.
you carrying out your duties.
Prandaj,
You've done nothing
urnoni
wrong.
dhe veproni tek
So,
ata që ju mendoni që veprojnë kundra jush.
Go out and carry your
Dalini të
duties
lirë.
against those that you think that are undermining
Polici
you or
tjetër
acting against you. So leave
I
us
ndërhyn në
alone.
gjuhën silbe
The
dhe
other
thot,
policeman intervenes
Ti
in
mos fol
Serbian
fare.
and says, you shut up,
ty s'e pyet askush.
because nobody's asking you.
Polici para prak pyet
The first
Muharremi, shërin tim,
policeman
dhe
asks
pyet se ju
Muharrem,
a
my
keni të
cousin,
holla.
whether
Thot
he
po.
had any money, and he says
Dhe
yes.
ku I keni? Pyet se kemi
And
në
he asks,
shtëpinë tonë aty
where
prapë.
were they? And he says, in the
Dhe
house to the rear.
Pa një pa dy,
And,
vendoshin ata të kthehen në shtëpitë
without
të tyre
any
dhe t'ju
hesitation,
japin të holla.
they say they would
Disa minuta
return
mbrapa,
to their houses in
të
order to
gjithë
get the money.
grumullohen dhe
Some moments
vendosen
later, however,
në
all of
shtëpinë
them
e cila ishte përballë
were put
dhe
together
shtëpinë
at the
ndërmjet
house
aty, diku rreth
opposite,
50 metra
about
ndërmjet,
5 or 6
dhe
meters away, the one that is 5 or 6
I
meters
kthehen
away,
përballë murit
and then they
dhe
make them
me të
face
shtena
the wall
së pari qet
and,
në armë pistolete
from
në ajër,
a pistol
pastaj
gun,
fillon
a pistol
me automatikun e tyre dhe rrezon për tokë.
was shot in the air first, and then with an automatic gun rifle they were shot at and they fell.
Kjo ishte ai moment kur ata psuan ata më të keqen.
That is the moment when Calamity fell.
Molim vas, podsjećam vas na deo vaše
Please, I
izjave
would
sa
like to
4.
remind
strane
you of
pasus
the part
8,
of
gde
your
izjavljujete
statement, page
No.
4, paragraph 8.
We have gone past the time which we could sit, and I brought your cross-examination. I have brought your cross-examination to a close. Mr. Milosevic, you must concentrate on asking relevant questions, and you must stop arguing with the witnesses. That way you'll get through very much more. We're going to adjourn now. I'm afraid there's no time for re-examination or anything else.
Sevier, I was going to make this observation, though, that in his 45 minutes of cross-examination of the man who says that he's lost and seen the loss of his parents under gunfire, in a very substantial alleged massacre, the accused hasn't actually put a case. And the 45 minutes really has taken us nowhere. And I'm going to count it, for the purposes of argument, as evidence that is unchallenged.
We're dealing with a litigated person. We're dealing with a litigated person, Mr. Nice, and therefore various different considerations apply. Mr. Milosevic, we are adjourning now. We'll deal with matters in the morning on Monday. Mr. Yemeni, thank you for coming to the International Tribunal to give evidence. It's now concluded. You are free to go.
Uložim prigovor
I would like to
na ovo ispitivanje.
put in an objection
Pogotovo
to
na
this
tvrdnju gospodina Najsa.
cross-examination, especially to what Mr. Nice
sve
just
što-
said.
You've heard
Because
our response.